Brew Strong is brought to you by Blickman Engineering, home of the Riptide. Visit them online at blickmanengineering.com.
Brewers, it's time for the beer radio you've been looking for. This is the show that dispels myths, tackles the toughest topics, and makes no apologies for geeking out on beer. Hosted by two guys that drink before they think, Jamil Zainasheff and John Palmer. This is Brew Strong.
Hey, howdy, hey, my brewing brothers and sisters.
Good evening.
I'll do my Palmer impersonation. Greetings, Cretans.
There we go. All right. We're live again, enjoying a couple of beverages and talking about people's questions here on Brew Strong. You're watching Brew Strong. I'm Jamil Zainasheff. My good buddy Travis Combel and Michael Persyn is joining us for the first time. Say hi, Michael.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
No, you're supposed to say hi, Michael. You know.
You missed the dad joke.
Right.
Yep.
I'm full of dad jokes.
Well, something.
Well, yeah, since Michael's first time joining us, Michael's a chemical engineer, studied brewing at UC Davis, works in the water treatment side of things currently, and the award-winning homebrewer as well. So just Michael and I met up in Reno, I don't know, a year ago or so.
Yeah.
And ran into him again just recently and thought he might be a fun addition to the show. Give him a shot here to see what he can add. You know, it's always just a crapshoot.
We'll see how bad I do.
That, or are you thinking it can't get much worse, or what?
Yeah, you know, it's just the way it goes. You know how it can't get much worse. I'm losing my touch here on the Blickman, getting Blickman in. No, our great friend John Blickman sponsors this show. He pays for the show, so you don't have to. Check out all the goodies on their site, blickmanengineering.com. Great folks, really extremely knowledgeable. Another great engineer. I mean, he's a mechanical engineer. I don't know what kind of engineer he is, but John Blickman's an engineer. He worked at Caterpillar for a long time. Really smart dude and just builds amazing things. He's got a very interesting way at looking at solving problems. And that's how he creates new things for the homebrew industry, like the revolutionary, beer gun at the time. Nobody was thinking that way. He did. And today he's making everything from, the really sturdy Anvil series up to the, pro brew equipment. And I think they're making stuff at least 10 barrels in size now. So if you're in the market for new stuff, check them out. blickmanengineering.com. You can also send a nice email to John Blickman. Feedback there you go. He's got some Blickman gear. Feedback at blickmanengineering.com. And say hi to John Blickman. Tell him thank you for paying for the show. He's been doing it a long time. Great guy. Today, I wanted to do some more live Q&A. It always pains me to see the number of questions that I still have not gotten to in the emails there. If you have a question, feel free to send it in. The recent questions are getting answered pretty quickly now. We're getting to them in a month or two, just because the ones that are 10 years old, we'll get to those eventually. They're already 10 years, 11 years, doesn't matter. But the other ones, we're going to get to them as quickly as possible. So you can send them in at Brew Strong at thebrewingnetwork.com. And just try and keep it to, one question per email if you can. Makes it a little easier. for us to go through them. All right, let's kick it off with a fairly easy one, I think. Let's see here. Bottling from keg question. John writes, hello, John and Jamil. I was bottling my Black Widow Porter a few months back, and as usual, my mind was wandering. If I install the valve and line on my capper with a nozzle aimed directly in the bottle so I can shoot some CO2 in the headspace to purge as the bottle gets capped, do you think this would help prolong oxidation or staling? Or I assume he means, delay or prolong the freshness. I thought it may not be worth the hassle, but I figured you two could give it great advice on this idea. Thanks and cheers. All right. Who wants to go first?
I'll ask a question. Or Michael, you can if you wish.
I mean, for me, the beer gun is the end all be all. I mean, I try to cap on foam. That's kind of filling that headspace with CO2. And if not, then actually in the directions for the beer gun, it's like, just shoot a little CO2 on there before you cap it. So
right.
That's kind of, but I haven't used anything else. And so
Jamil, you've been brewing beer for competition since barley was invented. And I guess you used to use a counter pressure filler, right?
Right.
And
the only thing they had back then.
But you still have a valve for CO2.
Right. There's a valve there's a valve, or, my favorite one had two like hand levers, one for gas, one for beer.
Right.
And then had a spring, a dialed spring for pressure relief.
Right. So if John's bottling off a keg, I'm assuming he's using something like that or a beer gun.
Right.
And should be doing what Michael said regardless. You don't need to put it on your capper necessarily.
Right. Right.
I'm too excited to get my cap on to contain, I get straight over as soon as I give it a little spurt on top, hopefully got some foam coming up like Michael said.
Mm-hmm. So,
I mean, I don't think he would hurt what John asked, but it seems like he might be overcomplicating it.
Right. Yeah, I think so. The thing is, when you're packaging, a lot of the dissolved oxygen in the package comes from turbulence of the beer as you're filling the package. When you first shoot that beer in there, it's agitating around, the surface is uneven, and you are picking up your oxygen from the gas that's inside your cylinder, right? So when like a can filler is filling cans, they drop a nozzle down, an atmospheric filler. They drop a nozzle down and it runs the gas and purges the CO2, hopefully drives out all the air that's in the can, right? Rests on the bottom, drives it out. Same thing happens in a bottle. Both of them are imperfect. Like if you start putting CO2 in a vessel, it's not like you're adding water to it and it's, to really laying on the bottom. It's kind of like a little cloud. That cloud mixes with the other gases that are in there. So it's not 100% CO2 until you really flush the vessel out for some time. Once you flush the vessel out, then you start adding the beer. And then the beer is mixing with the CO2 that's sitting in there instead of the air. So if you don't pre-purge your vessel, that's where you're going to pick up a lot of dissolved oxygen. So the thing to make sure of is that your initial purging is very effective, because if you don't do that, when you fill it up, if you just squirt some gas on top, or even if you squirt in gas in the vessel as you go, it's not going to help with that as much. So the most important thing is to do a long purge of CO2 in the vessel before you add your beer. And that way you're sure that you've gotten the air out. And it takes a long time. But if you do it, and if you really purge a long time, and you can get all the DO out of the package, you can fill and get like 0 parts per billion with a beer gun. We did it at Heretic, as we're testing out methods. So the other thing to keep in mind is if you're filling cans, the larger the opening of the vessel, the worse the DO is going to be. So like when people fill up crowlers, I think that's going to be as good as, other packaged beer. It's just huge amounts of DO in those things. So you got to drink them real quick if you get a crowler from a brewery. If you get a bottle with a crown cap opening, that opening's so small that if you purge out all the CO2 or all the air out of there with CO2, it's very hard for the air to get back down in that little hole. So you tend to get a very good low DO reading on that thing. So,
yeah, I would just add to that, like most breweries they're making crowlers, they're not using beer guns, and they're not really purging. I've never really seen a thorough purging of the can and capping,
right,
putting the lid on the foam.
They tend to fill them with a piece of rubber hose on.
Yeah. If for better or worse, the ones around here do a purge, but it's still a crowler.
Right. Yeah. And it's, the problem is as you bring in the lid, whether it be a crown cap or, a 202 crown for a can or a crowler size lid, as you bring it down, it tends to, trap some oxygen. The ideal way on the can is to slide it in across foam. So you're kind of wiping it across the foam instead of dropping it on a bottle. It doesn't really matter that much. I don't think you want to try and blow CO2 under the crown cap and put it down.
Yeah, it could be tricky.
Go more TC's model of let's just get the cap on there nice and quick.
Yeah, I guess lastly, one thing I do too is when I'm bottling, I'll put the cap already in the little crimper, the magnet. So I just, it all goes right on in seconds,
Oh yeah.
Preload your cap, haven't.
Oh yeah.
Preloaded, ready to rock and roll.
Absolutely. Yeah. If I'm forgetting it as I'm filling with, again, because it's the beer gun we use, and it's a one-handed device at that point in time. So if I forget it, I'm catching it. And I'm getting a little spritz of sanitizer ready to roll on as soon as I pull out, get a little squirt.
You always got to pull and squirt.
Yeah, or slide in.
Pull first, squirt second. All right. That was a good question from John. Gets the juices going, gets us thinking. Let's do this. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be back with more of your questions right after this.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
Are you looking for a simple brewing system that's great for all grain brewing, but everything on the market seems to be full of compromises? Blickman Engineering has the answer. The Blickman Brew Easy All Grain Brewing System. The Brew Easy is a complete system with easy upgrades and a beautiful compact design, perfect for any size brewing location. At its core, the Brew Easy is built on two gorgeous Blickman Boilermaker brew kettles, a high-temperature March pump, and either a top-tier gas burner or the new Boil Coil electric heater. The Brew Easy adapter lid allows the pots to stack on top of each other, forming an efficient, strong, and compact brewing setup that comes in 5, 10, and 20-gallon batch sizes. Upgrade your Brew Easy system with full automated control by adding a Blickman Tower of Power temp controller, and make moving around easy with the Blickman Kettle Cart. The Brew Easy is modular. If you already own a Boilermaker kettle, you can build your Brew Easy by purchasing just the modules you need. The new Brew Easy all-grain brewing system. See it today at BlickmanEngineering.com and brew with Blickman quality on your new Brew Easy.
Learning to brew has never been so disgusting. This is Brew Strong.
All right, we're back. We're doing live Q&A. If you're listening live, you can ask your questions. Just go to the comments section under the video that you're watching on Facebook and type in your questions, and TC or one of us will read off your question for you, as long as it's not utterly unrelated to brewing. And well,
it's not worth much going with that.
Yeah, there you go.
And so far in the chat, all we have is Jeffrey Brown has said howdy.
Howdy, Jeff. All right, let's see here. Here's one. Robert asked, hello, Jamil. I was wondering if you would give me your Evil 3 recipe so I can try to clone it. I live near San Luis Obispo, which is Southern California, for those not in California, and we don't get up there very often. I guess he means up near Heretic. It's hard to travel with young kids. I'm a big fan of you and your beers and would love the chance to try to make it. I understand if you can't, but I thought it was worth a shot. One day I'll make it there, probably years down the line. Thank you, Robert. Well, since he sent this in 2018, it could be that he made it.
He might have. Do we need to do a Can You Brew It where Michael or I try to guess the recipe and you act like Mitch and say, that's not it.
That's a tough beer. That thing's delicious.
There you go. All right. Well, that's an interesting challenge there, Travis.
Okay.
Let's see. Can you guys guess what the Evil 3 recipe is?
I can tell you my approach, but Michael, you go first, please.
Well, I mean, from what I can tell about the alcohol, I'm thinking there's probably some adjuncts like sugar, corn, sugar. I'm thinking you're probably using something really clean like 001 to get it, try to keep it clean and then hitting it with a ton of oxygen. The hops are trickier. I haven't had it in a couple of years, but if I can remember, I was thinking there was a good amount of mosaic in it, but kind of taking a shot in the dark because I haven't had one in 2 years, I think, year and a half.
And now you never will again.
Yeah.
It's been retired.
Yes.
Unless we can brew it.
There you go. Can you brew it?
What would you say, Travis?
Well, I was going to approach the malts first. Traditionally, I know you would have had a little bit of like a light British crystal in there. I'm not sure if you have a British crystal in that. So I would look at whatever my local pale malt was. I get raw. It's not the same raw as yours, but it's pretty close. And I would work on a recipe to get the final gravity and roughly that color based on enough sugar instead of raw to get that, to get that. And then as much hops as I could force in there. I remember the pineapple. I'm trying to think what probably threw that pineapple. And I'd have to check because you probably also list what hops were in there at some point in time.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I think if people went back to other shows and stuff, they might get an inkling of what could possibly be in there. But I'm going to say you guys are right.
So British Crystal 15, British Crystal 45.
All right,
just a hair.
This would be in 30 U.S. barrels. And actually, since it's high gravity, your after boil amounts are going to be 28 U.S. barrels at 21.2 Plato. See, all you got looking for a 5-gallon recipe of this, you're gonna have to do some work yourself. 21.2 Plato. The finishing gravity is going to be 1.6 Plato, which gives you 11.5 ABV. 1.6 Plato is right around 1006, 1007. So quite dry. It tastes like that, but that's because alcohols have a way of, making it like that. But yeah, kind of tastes like, your regular old IPA. So it is 2,155 pounds, 2,155 pounds of silo malt, which is raw Alex malt is what we're using. It is a super light American 2-row pale malt, lighter than a lot of Pilsner malts. So very light. So you'll use the lightest American type 2-row you can. If you use something like British malt, is it going to be way too heavy? It's not gonna work for you. Because Tasty was involved in this. It was Tasty McDowell, Mitch Steele, and I came up with this together. It had 110 pounds of Pilsner malt because he always liked throwing some Pilsner into his IPAs. And he also liked throwing in wheat. So I had 55 pounds of wheat. So it was Weirmann Pilsner and raw wheat. Because way back when we first started, Mitch was saying, "Oh, everybody says he hates, caramel malts, crystal malts in IPAs," and he's like, "I don't." He's like, "It just, don't want them overused." So it's got 55 pounds of caramel malt in there. Then 225, as Michael was saying, 225 pounds of dextrose, which is corn sugar. You use dextrose because it has a better flavor once fermented than corn sugar does. Corn sugar is a little bit more kind of cidery, sharp once it's fermented out versus the corn sugar. So that's why you use corn sugar. The mash temp, 150 degrees Fahrenheit. We would mash dough in the mash mixer, transfer it over to the lauter tun, which takes a good 20 minutes or so, then voile off in the lauter for, an hour till it became clear, then start running off into the kettle, which takes like another hour. So there's about two and a half hours of conversion time if you're interested. And then for the hops, when we first started making this, we would throw in just a ton of hops, the highest bittering hop we could get. And the problem with that was it was kind of vegetal. You could taste the fact that you were using a lot of hop material, and it tasted a bit too green. So one of the things we did was to switch to a CO2 hop extract. So they extract, and we used a varietal one. We would use a CTZ hop extract, Columbus Tomahawk Zeus extract. We just called it Columbus. And we would get 700 gram cans from Hopsteiner and use those. And we would put 1.2 kilograms of this hop extract at 60 minutes. It's enough that when you add it, the way we determined how much to add was you could add and it would just be in the boil. You wouldn't notice anything. We kept adding until the point where you saw a coating on the kettle. So it's a real pain to clean up the kettle after this. But we figured we wanted as much in there to where the wort was rejecting it at that point.
Super saturated.
Super saturated. Could not dissolve anymore. So that's how we determine the amount of hop extract. And you can get hop extract like this from your, I'm pretty sure More Beer has it, sells it in, smaller packages.
And that's not the pre-isomerized stuff, right? That's just straight up hop extract. Okay.
Yes.
Hopsteiner has a lot of excellent products. I've seen it. They don't make them small yet, but they make quite the variety. Sorry to sidechain you on that, Jamil. I know you discussed it previously with Scott Janish, but they have quite a different variety of hop products that aren't directly hops.
Right. Yeah, they're coming up with a lot of great stuff at Hopsteiner. Let's see here. Then we'd also add into the kettle at 60 minutes 2 kilograms of Columbus T90 pellets at 15.7. The last recipe I had was 15.7% alpha acid, which matters. A lot of times people give you these recipes and they don't include the alpha acid. And then in the whirlpool, we would do 10 kilograms of Citra at 12.5% alpha acid, 10 kilograms of Amarillo at 8.8, and 5 kilograms of Simcoe at 13.5. Fermentation was with WLP 001. And generally, we fermented stuff starting around 67 degrees Fahrenheit. And it would kind of run around 67, 68. Using 001. Did I say 001 already? All right. Mm-hmm. And then dry hopping was a combination of 16 kilos of Citra at 12.5, 16 kilograms of Amarillo at 8.8, and 8 kilograms of Simcoe at 13.5.
Is that roughly the 11-pound, like two 11-pounders, 2 11-pounders, 1 11-pounder? I think it's pretty close to that. No, it's not. It's more than that.
Right. Well, they do. They're 5 kilo boxes.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Well, yeah, 5 kilos. Yeah, it's 11 pounds, right?
They're 5 kilo and 20 kilo boxes. But when we brewed this, we would brew 4 turns to fill a fermenter, and then in its heyday, we were probably doing 4 or 5 fermenters. So we were making, of course, the net out of it was around 80 some odd barrels after all the dry hopping, everything else. We get about 80 something out of a 120. And so we would do 4 or 5. We'd do 320, 400 barrels of finished beer out of it for that.
Very nice.
Even then, it was like not enough. So the dry hopping, we originally started with kind of 3 dry hops and a blend of the hops, and then kind of merged it into other forms of that. But, the thing to say would be, you can just throw it all in at once. If it's in a carboy, rock it around, shake it around so it all gets quickly distributed. And that'd be about it. We also did recirculation as well. What were you going to say, Michael?
Oh, I was just going to ask about oxygenation, because I know with that high gravity beer, you've always recommended a lot of oxygen. I was curious if you had kind of a procedure or even DO data on like where you guys were trying to get to.
Right. We would hit 10 parts per billion initially, and then give it a second dose, after that, 8, 12 hours later. Anytime you're over 20 Plato, it's a good idea to give it a second dose of oxygen. Yeah, I'd be careful about doing too much oxygen. I'd be careful about, going too warm. If you're failing to achieve the lower, you got to, pitch fairly heavy. If you're failing to achieve the lower finishing gravity, you can, warm the temperature as the fermentation slows. That doesn't tend to cause any hot alcohols. The trick on this was getting just really hidden alcohol in it. So you could have an 11.5% beer that tasted like, you're drinking a regular IPA or maybe a double IPA. So that, and, the dry finish is critical, because when you get up, to those gravities and that amount of malt, it tends to be, a lot of them tend to be too heavy and syrupy. We want it to be just light and easy drinking. Light and easy drinking, 11.5%. That's what I always say.
And that it was
a nice session triple IPA.
Yeah.
Yes. We called it a session beer. Yeah. Oh, wow. And I've told the story before about drinking Evil 3. I'll tell you what. Let's take a short break, and when we come back, I will give you my story of drinking Evil 3 like a session beer. We'll be back right after this.
Back to the 2 guys that know how to turn beer into beer. This is Brew Strong.
All right, we're back. We're doing your live Q&A, answering your questions that you've sent in. And we love your questions. Keep sending them in. Before the break, I was talking about drinking Evil 3 like a session beer. My good friend Matt Thomas, he invited me over to help another friend of mine help move a hot tub. And so I'm like, all right. And he goes, yeah, a bunch of guys are getting together. And, I'm like, oh, okay. So I figured a bunch of people getting together, and we had just packaged Evil 3. I grabbed a flat of, 16 ounce Evil 3 cans and to go to the party. And we're there. And first thing is move that hot tub. Well, there's like 30 of us. And so we just go, and it's right next door. So we go just pick the thing up, put it on some wheels, roll it over, with 30 people, we just pick it up, set it back down. We're done. That was it. Took all of like 10 minutes tops. And so then we're standing around. It's like, well, hard work deserves a drink. So we each crack open a 16-ounce Evil 3. And boy, it's tasting good. It's a hot day, hammer those things down. Goes down so easy. And we're talking and, we'll have a second one. Before we know it, each of us has consumed 4 16-ounce Evil 3s. So pretty quickly, within, I think, 45 minutes to an hour, it was maybe, it was within 45 minutes of getting there that we drank all these. And let's see here. If you have 4 times 16 times 11.5, that's what I call 736 points of alcohol. If you divide that by your vodka, which is going to be 40% alcohol, that's like drinking 18.4 ounces of vodka in a pint, almost an imperial pint of vodka in 45 minutes. So we were pretty hammered pretty quick. And this is the only time in my life I drank to the point where I didn't remember something the next day. And these friends of mine, they helped get me home. I was only 3.5 blocks from home. So got home, I had I poured myself a giant cup of water, went up to bed, and all I remember is actually pouring the cup of water. But I woke up the next day and I'm looking around. Everything's perfect. My clothes are taken care of. I'm in bed. I apparently brushed my teeth. Everything seems fine. Have a bit of a headache, feeling a bit weak, but everything was fine. But I do not remember anything after pouring the glass of water. So there you go. That's my one time of kind of blacking out.
I think you did good to last that long, to have your memory that far into the whole story.
Yes. It was, I know Matt was hurting too, but do not do that. I recommend highly against doing that. But it shows you, it just drank so easy. You're chatting with people and you just keep sipping and you don't really, we've all had that happen to us, but not to that extent, probably.
I'm utterly let down that I have not led you down that path previously. It's only once in your life. It's depressing. I guess we're usually too focused on something like JBF when we actually get together, that we don't get a chance to get truly pissed like that. That's nice. Good on you, Matt. I hope he's listening.
I think you and I have hit the beer bag pretty hard from time to time, but nothing like that. I've never consumed that much alcohol that quickly, which is again, not a good thing to do.
That's your Peter drinking Pliny story.
Right. So, Michael, the time that Travis and I met, we were at the homebrew conference in San Diego, and we were at the San Diego Toronado, which they had opened, which was much nicer than the San Francisco Toronado, if you ask me. And I'm sitting there with my buddy Peter from Australia. I forget, we drove down there together. I don't know, whatever. But we're there, and he wanted to have some Pliny because he not, had Pliny in a long time, whatever. So he drinks one, orders another, drinks another, and he's just going through them pretty quick. And but he's talking to somebody next to him. I can't really see behind Peter's giant bald head who he's talking to. And it turns out it was Travis. And I don't know, he and Travis were saying something. And then he introduced us. And then we became fast friends after that. I don't know what was happening on your side of that conversation, though. What was happening on your side of the conversation? I never heard.
I wasn't paying attention to how many Plinies he was having necessarily. But when you guys walked in, I hear the voice. I'm like, that's Jamil. I've listened to too many Brew Strongs to not know that that's Jamil. That's Jamil. And so God, I don't want to bother him. And Peter, 2 or 3 Plinies in, like, you should talk to him.
He was like, he didn't care.
Right.
With the Aussie accent, I'm guessing.
Yes.
I got a funny story about Australians. I was in the army, and the Aussies, we did a training exercise, and after that we had this big party, and Aussies can put them down. I'm just gonna say that. So I can
Peter can drink.
Yeah.
He talks about session beers and stuff, but man, he'll slam some pretty high alcohol stuff. Let's see here. Werty writes, "Hi, Brew Strong. First of all, thank you so much for the tons of really great podcasts you made. I keep listening to all of them, starting with number 1, and will take some more years to complete them all, but I will keep on. Maybe due to the huge amount of sessions, I lost oversight, and one topic that was dealt with in one episode went lost. I can't find it anymore. Maybe you could help me with that. I'm pretty sure that you made a podcast about upscaling recipes on the homebrew scale for brewing them on bigger systems. It was definitely with Jamil. I searched the list of all episodes twice, so I must be stupid or blind. Sorry. Most of our listeners are stupid and blind. Yeah.
It's from the wood alcohol.
You fit right in. You fit right in there.
That's got to be in the progasm or something, right?
If I remember right, it was when you were talking about scaling up Evil Twin, if I remember right.
Oh, could be. So I must be sorry for that, but could you help me with that? Tell me where I can find it. So there you go. You guys, thank you very much for helping me in my small brewery with this and all the work that you did and will do. Keep up the good work. Listener from Germany.
Guten Tag.
Very, very nice. Yes, Guten Tag. Let's see. So the simple thing on scaling up, and you hear all these stories people have about is, oh, no. All the internet stuff that I always read before doing this and especially Can You Brew It was, no, you can't just scale commercial recipes. It doesn't work that way because, they have different equipment and, it's, physics is different for, commercial breweries than it is for small breweries, which we know that's nonsense because physics is physics. So the thing is, commercial brewers tend to do things differently. Like when I was explaining the Evil 3 recipe, it takes a long time to transfer, on that scale, you're waiting quite a while. So, it's not that brewers, use of hops is more efficient. It's that it takes an hour to transfer a lot of times from the kettle to the whirlpool, or, it takes 20 minutes there. Then it takes, even at Heretic, where we went pretty fast, it took 20 minutes there and it took an hour to knock out 30 barrels into a fermenter. And that's a barrel every 2 minutes is fairly quick. You got to account for that time sitting hot. And because it's sitting hot, you're still isomerizing alpha acids. And that's where the magic, it's more efficient for commercial brewers to use hops comes in. Or people, that's not the case. So as long as you're boiling, as long as you're doing these same things and the physical action on the ingredients you're working with is the same, it's the same, and it scales the same. It's simple math. If you have a batch that's 10 times larger, you multiply by 10 and you get the same result. The only trick comes from efficiency. So if I'm scaling a recipe from, a 5-gallon batch to, a 5,000 gallon batch, multiply by 1,000. But the trick is if the equipment I'm working on has a higher extract potential, the ability to, extract more out of the malt, then I need to adjust the base malt up or down. So the specialty malts, especially the highly kiln malts, roasted malts, they tend to just translate by volume. As long as the volume's the same, the result will be the same. It just tends to rinse out pretty quick. But, the extract is what will throw you. So instead of, people will do the math and they go, well, I'm going to overshoot the gravity, the starting gravity. I'll lower everything down. But then they're lowering all their specialty malts down too, which is the mistake. Or they're overcompensating on their specialty malts. They're like, oh, I won't get enough extract. I'm going to increase everything. Don't increase everything. Just increase what is the base malts, the things that are getting converted and extracted for gravity points. Those you adjust. Everything else you just do simple math on. That makes sense?
Jamil, you told me at least a story. I don't know if you ever said it on Brew Strong. And it's related to this. It's different, but it's related. You made a batch of, I want to say Evil Twin or Cousin. I think it was Twin. Where you made an effort to move all the hops into the whirlpool. And it actually came out more bitter.
Yeah, that has to do with the fact that IBUs are meaningless. I mean, it is an actual measure, and there is a scientific method for measuring IBUs. But IBUs are not the best measure of what we taste as bitter.
It's bitterness, yeah. And also the fact that, as you're saying again, it takes you X amount of time to knock out in your whirlpool. Mm-hmm. It takes X amount of time to knock out from your whirlpool into your fermenter.
Right.
So you ended up with a lot more contact time on those hops, even though you tried to move them later in the game. So to me, that was very interesting. And Michael, you said you remember the Evil Twin discussion. He might have brought it up then. I know you've mentioned that to me before, and that just like blew my mind. That putting the hops, like, oh, okay, we're going to put them all over there, and it came out more bitter. So,
and that might have been on, one of the hazies or something.
I just had a kind of a question, I guess. So I've seen a lot on brewing websites where they'll kind of let it slip how many, or even on Brew Strong, the dry hopping, how many pounds per barrel, or, kind of stuff like that. And I guess I've always kind of noticed that the commercial dry hopping amounts for hazies is kind of, I would never put that in my homebrew like that. There's no way I'm doing 4 pounds per barrel equivalent in this little guy. I end up around like, 1.5 ounces per gallon, which if my math is right, that's like what, 2.5 pounds per barrel. It's like, could you speak to that, Jamil? Like what the difference is, why commercial breweries are just going gangbusters with the dry hop, whereas I feel like I end up with hop burn if I go any farther. So it's like, I'm not trying to get that. So
it's an arms race, right. Everyone's trying to outdo everyone else with, more intense hop character, more intense bittering and all that. There certainly is a limit to it, but yeah, there's cases where people are doing 7 or 8 pounds per barrel, which is crazy.
Yeah, I don't know how they avoid hop burn because, like I said,
so I think some of them are exaggerating the truth a little bit, and we go back to those hop products. They say it's X pounds per barrel, but they're not using hops; they're using extracts. The various extracts, so you're not going to get the greenness that you're thinking of. But there again, a lot of them do get the hop burn you're talking about.
Right, that's what I was going to say. You get
a lot of them are shitty.
Yeah.
Sorry. No one that I've ever had a beer with ever, your beers are great.
Right. A lot of all the commercial breweries I've ever tasted, nobody had a bad product.
Right. For all the beers I've drunk before.
And I guess my only other one too is at Heretic, did you guys use an internal calandria in the boil kettle, or was it direct fire, electric?
Internal calandria. Once you get past about 30 barrels, you can't really do well with steam jacketing. You got to have steam jacketing and then an internal calandria. You can direct fire past that. What was it? I forget. God, the guy originally from Dry Dock who.
Yeah. I was thinking him. Not where's that now? Not Altstadt, but the one before that.
Right.
He had like a 30 some odd barrel direct fire.
He had a 70 barrel
direct fire
from Germany. Yeah.
Well, so I guess if you're familiar with the gentleman that was at Dry Dock that's now at Altstadt, the stop he had between that, they have a 70 barrel direct fire.
Yeah.
I guess just for me,
direct fire.
I remember at Davis, they had an internal calandria on their pilot, and the grad student was going off about your hop utilization goes through the roof because that thing's like, it's got the hat and the motion is crazy going through that. And he was
the motion does help, right? So it's like anything when you're trying to dissolve something in a liquid, if you stir it, it dissolves. If you pour a whole bunch of sugar in a lemonade, let's say, it all sinks to the bottom, and you get your spoon, you stir it, and it dissolves. Why? Because it got to be in. If you left it there, it would all sit on the bottom, and some of it would slowly dissolve, but not much. But you stir it, and then it all dissolves in. Similar thing. But I would say that most homebrewers are so aggressively boiling their wort that it is every bit as violent as a calandria.
I don't do that. So Jamil, going back to that 37 barrel at Heretic, were you? I mean, Merlins recirculate and kind of external,
right?
Were you recirculating
external calandrias? There's internal calandrias.
Yeah. So did you have a recirculation the whole time during the boil, which I think is crossing the line of what Mike was talking about versus, efficiency and so forth. I mean, every story I've heard about, they got something with a Merlin and you can do a boil in 30 minutes, but the beer turned out horrible. So they reversed some processes to get that out of the system or didn't follow the right process. So were you recycling or recirculating around your calandria, or it was just your kettle had a calandria? Right.
So the one we had was what dimple plate is. It's got dimples in it.
Yeah.
Looks like a golf ball.
Stainless steel, with like golf ball dimples in it. And they use it to make jackets around stainless fermenters. There's the inside cylinder, then they will weld this plate of dimple plate around it. And it kind of gets the glycol flowing around that way. And they'll put, an inlet and an outlet on the plate, and it flows in one side, goes all the way around. The fermenter comes out the other side.
Right.
So our fermenter manufacturer, our brew plate manufacturer, AAA out of Oregon, they took two pieces of dimple plate, put it, back to back, and then bent it into a circle. And then they put the steam in on one side and the steam out on the other end of the plate, and the steam would go out. And then they actually did two circles of this. And so the wort in between those two circles would heat to boiling very quickly.
Right.
And so once it starts boiling, it rises up, of course, and it rises up very violently. And then there's a hat on top, and then it hits the hat, gets knocked back down into the kettle.
So you got lots of convection movement.
Yes.
But you didn't do the external Merlin and come back in, or the Merlin's on top, but you got lots of movement. So you did everything you tell us not to do. That's very interesting.
I didn't tell you what to do. I did everything I tell you not to do. I opened a brewery. That's the thing I did.
You always tell us not to do that shit.
Yes. There you go. What can I say? But so there is, the movement, but I think there's a limit to movement helping with isomerization. There's only so much it can do, right? So it helps if you're kind of just simmering and you're seeing no movement. When you're as a homebrewer, you should see, chunks of break material rising up to the surface and, kind of cascading back down, rising and cascading. If you're seeing that, you're getting movement of your wort, and that should be enough to get you full, utilization of your hops there, or as much as you never get full utilization. I mean,
but equivalent to internal calandria.
Yes, maybe boil a little harder if that's what you're trying to match, or you go a few minutes more. But it's not like it's that different from what you do as a homebrewer. When we did Can You Brew It, we proved time and again that we could replicate these beers to a point where in a blind triangle test, nobody could tell what the beer was.
Every single one but Arrogant Bastard.
Well, Arrogant Bastard was too.
Sorry.
It's just Tasty that thought he was being clever and would continue it on. He wanted it. He wanted that bit to go on for forever. And I'm like, dude, we've got so many other beers to do. Oh no, this will be great. We'll get Mitch on more. And he loved the, hassling Mitch about it, all that, I'm just like, dude, we got it. You're the only one out of 6 of us that is saying it's different.
The year I met you in 2011, it was not matched. Tasty was convinced the previous batch that I did not taste was matched. I don't doubt Tasty, but I knew it. And the funny thing was, I'm like, this is fruitier. This is not evil, an Arrogant Bastard. And I was right. But Tasty's convinced the batch before that was matched for Arrogant Bastard. So if you go back to whatever the one before the 2011 NHC, that's the one where you must have nailed it.
I don't know. It was on one of the shows.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm old. I can't remember anything. All right. One more quick break, and then we'll wrap up right after this.
Back to the beer guys that make other beer guys look like wine guys. Brew Strong.
All right. We're back. We're doing your questions live. Let's see here.
We only had one in the chat on Facebook. We're a bit removed from it, and it's almost like a whole show if you do it.
Yeah, which is?
It was great to have Evil Free, but I want 4th of Juicy recipe.
Well, that one I don't know about. We'll see. Maybe someday. If you're good, if you're nice, if you behave yourself.
Gonna take it to your grave, aren't you?
All right. We're actually doing a very nice job of answering these questions fully, which I very much appreciate. Let's see here. Rod asks, Jamil, given your aversion to secondary fermentation, does it make you at all sad that Northern Brewer recommends 2-stage fermentation for their Jamil's Evil Twin kit? Rod from Hartford. No, I don't really care. The thing
I've never known you to be sad.
The thing is that, a lot of these kits that are out there, they often are not exact replicas of the recipe. I mean, some of them are, but a lot of times it's, when they take the homebrew recipe and they try and make it as close as possible, it's like, well, we don't carry that grain, or we do things differently. Our instructions are standard, et cetera, et cetera. So, or, a lot of times they don't want to measure a malt in, tenths of ounces. They're just like, yeah, it's like 1/4 pound, 1/2 pound, 3/4 pound. Which one do you want? And it's like, well, the closest one is 1/2 pound. Let's go with that. So they're not, they'll get you close. And the thing and the reason I'm not upset with any of these things is because the God's honest truth is a lot of you are not going to get that close anyways. You need to work on your fermentation first. You need to work on, your sanitization. You need to work on, these fundamental aspects of brewing. Once you get those, then you'll see the difference in, instead of, 4/10 of a pound, it's, 1/2 pound. Then you'll start to see those things. So these kits will get you quite close, and you'll really enjoy it. It'll make a great beer. A lot of beers it doesn't really matter that much. If you go in a little bit this way or that way, it's still going to taste very much like the beer. The limitation is going to be your brewing, skills. So don't freak out about, different stuff in these instructions. It's all right.
Now, I thought that recipe existed before you went pro. So I thought it might, obviously I don't have the insight you have on anything, much less that question. Well, some things, but anyway. But I thought he was reaching back. Didn't you have that recipe existing because you'd had so many metals with it? So maybe they would have made an attempt to get the ingredients right, but add the process.
It sounds like he's curious about the secondary and why
Well, yeah,
that would be a thing.
The
right?
process. But Jamil's been preaching no secondary for quite some time.
Right.
So it's a process thing over the recipe thing. But again, if someone literally took your award-winning recipe and tried to make it into something they can sell, but then also again, they're thinking their audience is people who need to do secondaries for some reason because their sanitation is not great because they're new brewers. So let's go ahead and infect it, and you'll never taste anything like the original and just screw the whole thing up.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway,
Maybe it's just some, I think leftover from the old homebrew days where we did stuff and we didn't understand it.
we're past that now. It's good to know we're past that.
I don't know. Hopefully.
We'll shout out to my good friends at Revision for some excellent beer and my favorite drinking glass, my Revision double wall stainless cup, which Jeb gave me a trip up there. He actually gave me a bunch of merch. He's like, here, what do you need? You like this? I'm like, oh, I love those. How about this? Love that. And then since I don't have any Revision beer here, great shout out to my friends at New Glory. They're Uba Dank. I don't know if I sent you this in the past, Travis.
You sent me some New Glory, but not that can. Look at that.
Oh, get the gummy worms. I almost went with the gummy worms.
Oh man,
I went with the Uba Dank this time.
Yeah.
And they making some great beers. Good folks.
Yeah, you can both kiss my ass or send me some beer. Either way, take your pick.
I'll send you.
If it's between kissing your ass and sending you beer,
Yeah.
the beer's in the mail right away. I mean, if you showered more, I'm just saying, maybe
You might go, okay.
be a little different. I don't know,
Noted. Yeah. The less I shower, the more beer Jamil sends me. That's noted.
Sean writes, hi guys, love your show. I have a beer fermenting now with temperature control. I'm trying to have a very clear beer when it is done, but the yeast strain I'm using is not very flocculent. I am bottle conditioning this batch, so here's my question. If I cool the beer at the end of fermentation to encourage flocculation, around how many degrees should I go and for how long? I still need some yeast in suspension to bottle condition. Thanks, Sean. All right, who wants to tackle that one?
I can do it in Charlie Danforth's voice if you want.
Yes.
He would explain to you about temperature and clarity and the way the yeast falls out at -1 degree Celsius. I don't do those American units, but the difference is that 2 degrees Celsius versus -1 could be 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to go to -1 to encourage the fastest possible.
Why not -2?
We want to be careful not to freeze our beer. It's not to ruin it.
Ah, right.
Charlie's making small beers.
I always thought he said -2, but I may be wrong. Hey, you were in his class.
I know that's what I remember was -1 because -2 you're risking, and then he would always say if you froze your beer, you ruined it.
Well, that's true. Charlie's always right.
Again, this was 6 years ago. So
the thing is, almost any beer you can go -2.
Okay.
Unless you're making something that's like 2 or 3% ABV. Anything in most homebrewers selection, you're at least 5%, and I'm pretty sure you can go down at least 28 Fahrenheit, which is about -2C, and you won't freeze the beer, but you start becoming at risk. I think you generally, as long as you stay above 26 Fahrenheit, something like that, for most of the beers that we do, you're not going to run into a problem. But you don't want to risk it. Like you're saying, it's better to go to -1 and not risk freezing your beer, because the temperature control is not precise. And also the way like the fermenters work, the chilling is not happening throughout the liquid all at the same rate. And if you get too cold, waiting on the center of your beer to get to whatever, or your probes to get to whatever, you may freeze along the sides of the fermenter, and you build ice on the inside of your fermenter. So you got to be careful about that. But I'm going to give you 10 points for the Charlie Bamforth impression, which was, I thought that was excellent.
I'd give him 10 if I had 10 to give, but I've got 0. But
right.
I do have a question.
Work a little harder, and you can earn some points too.
I'll get one of these days. So Mr. Super, tons of experience and great that you've got that training also plus your experience, Michael. Focusing on the fact that he wants to bottle condition without repitching, is that going to leave enough yeast in suspension to bottle condition without repitching?
That is the question.
I would default again to my mentor, Jamil, who would say, unless you're filtering or centrifuging, you will have plenty of yeast in suspension no matter what.
Yeah.
There's always yeast. Yeah. Okay. Unless you're going to wait a long time, eventually the yeast will fall out. But if you have a truly dusty yeast, it's going to stay in there for forever. If you end up with a dusty yeast issue, you cannot get that yeast back out. The one way you can is to really make it cold and then let it sit for a year, and eventually maybe it'll drop clear.
Well, Sean asked a question in 2015, so hopefully it's not still sitting.
Well, the thing is, you don't really know, other than, it just depends on the strain you're using, how dusty is it really, again, what temperatures you're using. So I would just go ahead and chill it like you normally would. And then, so it's good for you for bottling. You can do it also like visually. If the beer looks, so in the yeast book, I talk about how to measure yeast visually for concentration. And that can give you some clue. If it looks a bit hazy, you got plenty of yeast. If it looks brilliantly clear, you don't have enough yeast probably. I mean, it's still probably enough yeast in there. Even when it looks really clear, there's still probably enough yeast in there to eventually carbonate the bottle condition of beer. But, just to be safe, you want a little bit of haze in there. And then, as long as the haze isn't like a protein tannin complex haze from, if you're making something, a beer with a lot of hops and, some weed or something, you're going to get some haze in there, and that's not yeast.
And I would further say, if you're bottle conditioning, maybe not focus on clarity, like you're saying. When you're crashing, you just kind of go to what I do with my Hefeweizen when I bottle condition. I'd go to 55. There's plenty of yeast. It hasn't all dropped out. I put them on the shelf, let them carbonate, and then when I feel like they're done, then they go to -1. And it'll be at the bottom of your bottle, but you can achieve that clarity after the fact.
Right.
Yeah. I have the ultimate recommendation for Sean. Tell us what yeast next time.
Well, and eventually the bottles will clarify, even if there's more yeast than he thinks he wants. If it's yeast, eventually it will drop out. So not to worry. Again, I would look for a bit of haze. If it's really murky, no. It's too, chill it, wait until it kind of drops out and it's clarifying. It's one of the great values to fermenting in carboy. Is being able to see what's going on.
Yeah, I miss that. I miss that in my fermenter, my stainless.
Yeah, I can't see him.
Well, if you pull that black off, you might be able to see through the stainless.
I can see my reflection. That's about it.
Right. I love the conicals, but I hate that I can't see what's happening in the beer.
All right, we went long on this episode, so I blame it all on you guys. But that's.
I'll take the blame.
It's Michael's fault.
New guy's fault.
Will John pay extra?
We were on there.
Sure, we were. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, I was. Sorry. Yeah. Will John pay extra because it went long?
No.
I thought he paid extra for long.
Yeah. John does enjoy long, but you got to know Blickman, and John Blickman would enjoy that joke. He is just the funniest guy. He's hilarious, a smart guy, and he's putting all that creativity and brain power into making great products that you all should be checking out. Yeah, you don't necessarily have to buy, Blickman products, but at least give them a shot. Take a serious look at what they offer, because it's good stuff. I can attest to the fact that they make great stuff, and they're great people. So if you get a chance, send John Blickman an email, feedback at Blickman Engineering. Tell him thank you for sponsoring the show, because otherwise you'd have to pay for this, like a lot of other strange podcasts. But other than that, make sure you check them out. Say thank you. Check out all our fine sponsors, whichever ones they insert into the breaks here. It would be greatly appreciated, and I'll keep the show going. And I'm sure somebody cares about that. Who knows? All right. Until then, everybody, brew strong.
Brew strong.